We were not being true to our DNA, which is very much nerdy, solving problems using technology, talking about science, talking about engineering. I think that's been the biggest learning for me. Whenever you're trying to do something that's inauthentic, that is not your company's or your technology's DNA, you're not going to raise money. You're going to attract the wrong people, and sooner or later, they will realize they're not talking to the real you. You're just trying to sell things.
What is LEM?
This technology can be used for something that is one of the biggest bottlenecks of AI chips today. We have enough gray matter in our AI chips to do human-level intelligence. So why is it not possible today? And we think it's the wiring connectivity problem. So we haven't seen the full potential of AI yet. And there's more to come in quantum and neuromorphic that will be enabled by this density of wiring that hasn't been capped out yet.
We've built the most powerful AI power plants in history, but the grid connecting them can't handle the load. That grid is the wiring between chiplets. It's old, thin, slow, and it's the reason GPUs sit idle for up to 40% of the time. Not because AI isn't smart enough, but because the electricity can't flow. Jeka Viktorova is rebuilding the grid. Her invention, LEM, stamps ultra-dense copper wiring directly onto chips. It's like rewiring a city block with high-voltage cables instead of extension cords. Her invention, LEM, stamps ultra-dense copper wiring directly onto chips. It's like rewiring a city block with high-voltage cables instead of extension cords. Bigger bandwidth, bigger packages, faster communication. The promise of Syenta is that AI can use the power it already has. Last year, Jeka had 6 weeks of runway and no term sheets. A top US semiconductor giant told her, "You'll never hit these milestones." And 3 months later, they said they'd never seen progress like it. 4 term sheets, 3 governments on board, and a quiet lab in Redfern, Sydney is now at the center of the AI hardware conversation. If GPUs are the muscle of AI, Syenta is building the nervous system. The company that fixes the wiring becomes the company that everyone relies on. So let's get into it with Jeka, CEO and co-founder of Syenta. Can you contrast what the last 6 months has been and perhaps compare it to the last 6 months of 2024?
Oh my God. Well, let's start at the beginning. Last year, we pivoted pretty hard. Not in terms of the technology platform, but market-wise. We had a bit of a breakthrough. What I was building during my PhD was such a different technology. It was not scalable. It was incredible. We were doing something one of a kind. But my CTO, he was running a tight ship, and he did something that we didn't think was possible, which is prove out highest resolution combined with scalability and materials properties that were just not matched by anything else in the world at the moment. And we looked at this, and we went to Taiwan. And we started talking to everyone in Taiwan about this unique capability that exists in this random lab in Sydney. And we realized we could do something for AI chips. So we got back and we started a project with the top US...
When is this, by the way? Is this...
So this is advanced packaging.
No, when? Last year?
Last year,
Just
about beginning of
figuring
the
out
year.
okay.
That was March.
You've done the Taiwan trip.
We did a Taiwan trip late 2023. We were kind of exploring the market. 2024, we fully pivoted.
Yep.
We realized that this technology can be used for something that is one of the biggest bottlenecks of AI chips today. And we started work with the biggest semi-cap equipment manufacturer in North America. They gave us this challenge. They were like, oh, they will never make this. They will be never building this resolution combined with this uniformity at speed and scale. And every month we would catch up with them and share the results on the project. And after 3 months, and there were many challenges on that road, we realized, and they realized, that they've never seen the rate of technological progress that we've demonstrated before. They told us that. At the same time, the money in the bank goes down, running out of money, 6 weeks away from dying at the end of last year. And no term sheets on the table. I'm still raising.
Yeah.
We have this massive win of that project demonstrating something that's so uniquely positioned to solve some of the biggest challenges in AI hardware today. And 2 weeks later, we had 4 term sheets on the table. We got lucky. We worked hard.
How does one go from we're raising, now we have 4?
Well, I think VC landscape is all about FOMO. And you know this very well. Once you have the first offer, the others come. First it feels like kilometers and there you're inches away. But I think for our space, telling the story that is so complex, nerdy, and really communicating the impact, the global scale of what our technology can do, it's difficult. But when you combine that global vision of we're going to change the world because we build material in a different way with essentially here's a rate of progress, both commercially and technologically, that is so fast. That rate of learning is unmatched. If you can demonstrate the two together, that's how you raise money in a very tough environment with a very nerdy tech.
And so you got 4 term sheets. Contrast that now with the last 6 months. What have you been up to?
So we've closed the round late last year. We went from nobody will lead because this is too hard to understand to we had 4 new VCs joining and 2 more governments, actually 3 governments. Singaporean government, US government invested through their funds in addition to Arizona state government.
Wow.
Giving us more money in incentives than we've ever raised before, just because Arizona sees such value and they see that there's a new revolution coming. And it's really interconnect technology rather than transistors. We've capped out transistors. Now we're focusing on this new space, which is exciting. And it's really anyone's game and everyone's game. And you don't have to invest hundreds of billion, even though they are. You can start with millions and you can go gradually, and we'll need innovative solutions. We'll need to think outside the box. So that's really the unique perspective that I think Arizona saw. We're not the only ones. They're investing heavily in other technologies as well, but we've never seen this level of support before.
Why? What's special about Arizona?
Arizona is going to become the new home of TSMC. TSMC is incredible at what they've been able to build. And keep in mind, they're using the technology that hasn't been built for interconnect specifically. They're using transistor-like manufacturing technology to build everything. And it's unbelievable what they've been able to achieve in a partnership with NVIDIA, which gave us the baby that is ChatGPT. And at the same time, we're realizing that sovereignty, second sourcing, and supply chain is becoming more and more important. And that's why even TSMC is investing outside of Taiwan. So they're looking into Arizona. They're investing $160 billion to build some parts of AI chips. So when we talk about these chiplets that are connected by the wiring, so maybe I can start at the beginning, actually. AI has a wiring problem and a capacity problem. A wiring problem is really the interconnect density and a package size problem. So current technology, which is based in traditional processes, hasn't been able to solve for communication between chiplets. And that means that currently running inference, chips within the data centers are idle up to 40% of the time. And that's extremely inefficient.
Totally.
Think about the hundreds of billions of dollars being invested in data center infrastructure. How much of that energy and money is wasted just because we're not operating with optimal wiring.
Yeah. Just asleep.
Exactly.
That's terrible.
So why is that? Nobody really thought about manufacturing on micron scale. Everybody thought about nanometers, which was Moore's law, and still is, which was transistors. Wiring needs to be micron scale, and it needs to be large area. And this is something that is very important for our industry. And the second part I mentioned is capacity. Because we're using these nanometer scale technologies to build micron level stuff, everything gets slower. Your field size gets smaller. And then getting high yield and high throughput is impossible using conventional technologies. So what does that mean? You have people building more and more chips or trying to design more chips ordering more data center infrastructure, but supply chain of AI chips can't keep up with the demand. And the only people who've mastered the building of this packaging are TSMC. And the only place where they're able to do this is Taiwan. So there's a little bit of magic to what TSMC does. And we're not talking about EUV now. We're really talking about CoWoS packaging. This thing that connects two chiplets together. They've only been able to do this in Taiwan. And a part of it is supply chain. And the second part, we think, is the secret sauce process that they have. And currently, they're unable to replicate it anywhere else in the world. So despite Arizona becoming this hub of activity when it comes to semicon, they're not going to be packaging the chiplets there. They're going to be building the chiplets, shipping them back to Taiwan. And that's
right?
where
Wow.
AI chips are built. Yeah.
Wow.
And I think the granularity of that narrative, almost nobody understands. There might be, hundreds of people that really understand that there's no second source for packaging in the world today. But people who do understand, they start thinking about AI sovereignty. And the beast of AI demand, it needs to be fed somehow as well. So even purely commercially, you need to start thinking outside the box.
Keep going. You're on a roll. I'm hanging off every word.
Does this make sense to you?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. Like in the back of my mind, I'm thinking like, wow, I assumed I would need to come in and then summarize what you've just shared.
Oh, please do as well.
If I need to, I will, but I
Yes,
don't need
great.
to at the moment.
That's wonderful.
Because it's super clear.
Should I tell you how we solve both of those problems?
Please.
In detail?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's why I was like, keep going, because I was like, you just teed yourself up. You don't need me.
I need you. No, please. I need you to make me laugh. So the wiring problem.
Yeah.
There's one thing that the Hogwarts there is TSMC is unable to do, is to go to high resolution density of interconnects with the existing process. There's some physical limitations. And this means one of two things. Either you have to build entirely new fab infrastructure, invest even more, but you're still slow. So that's not necessarily solving the capacity issue. So what we do is we allow to break those physical limitations of high resolution interconnects. In addition to not being reticle limited, which is this field size limitation of current lithography, we can build packages that are bigger. We can build on a panel. We are allowing for that maximum reticle utilization that allows you to get your economics and throughput up. So that's how we solve the wiring problem. Denser wiring on larger packages, and then you can stack more chiplets on top of it. So your high bandwidth memory and your compute goes on there. And then the capacity. The cool thing that came out of my PhD was the scalability and the speed of deposition of material. So that's something that we've maintained and really parallelized since then. And that allows us to triple the productivity, triple the throughput, and reduce the costs at the same time, because we gain efficiency by eliminating some of the steps in the current manufacturing process.
And walk us through where you sit in the supply chain.
Because of the disruptive nature of what we're building, it's a chicken and egg problem. You kind of have to demonstrate the full chip level capability of this.
Well, you're relying on so many other parts and people and pieces.
Exactly. So what we've decided to do is to bring the industry together.
Yeah.
And I mentioned this big project we did last year. And since then, we've really rallied the foundries, the OSATs, the chip designers, the OEMs, the EDAs, all of these beautiful acronyms, which means basically people who build the tools, build the chips, design the software to build the chips, all of them together. And what we want to own is the process. This is the secret sauce that is LEM, that is Syenta. We've developed a unique way of building high resolution wiring, and we want to integrate it into the software. We want to enable the chip designers to use it to break design rules. if you think outside the box of the current manufacturing technologies, you can build things you've never built before. So we are essentially the recipe builders, and we give that recipe to the foundry that builds the chips.
Yeah. And how have you been able to show to everyone that you should be the center of gravity, the magic, the recipe? What was that journey like? In essence, power.
TRL progression,
Yeah.
really de-risking gradually. It's very easy to show that something works once, really translating it into numbers and data to prove that you can actually get to high yield, high reliability, the aspect ratio, the material quality that matches what is currently possible. So we focus a lot on how we build things. But the thing that matters to, NVIDIA, TSMC, is that what comes out at the end is exactly the same as they're used to seeing in terms of material quality and material property. And then showing the scalability. And that's something we've been obsessing over since the beginning of Syenta. In fact, my CTO, Ben, when he first met me, he was a customer of my technology. We had a very nice conversation about what I was doing in the lab at that time. He saw a demo. And then he asked me, Jeka, this is fantastic, but slow. How do we scale this? And then gradually, over the next year, we came up with an idea of how to scale it from the get-go. Before there was Syenta, before we incorporated, we had the 2 product lines in mind. One of them was solving for scale. And then over time, Ben realized that if he helps me solve my problem, he will solve many others, including his.
What is LEM?
Localized electrochemical manufacturing. To put it simply, imagine you have a high-resolution stamp, and then you have a substrate, which is your silicon wafer or glass or any flat substrate you can imagine. And then what you do is you apply electrochemistry, and you use the stamp and the substrate as 2 electrodes. And what you can do is you combine the deposition of metal and patterning at the same time. And that's the unique property. That's the one-of-a-kind, fast amplifying advantage that LEM has. It's almost like building copper with a stencil, but we use electrochemistry as a trigger, and that really localizes the way we deposit our metal. Typically, it would take many, many steps. One of them would be masking step, where you put polymer down, and then the unexposed areas would be filled with copper. So we avoid that first polymer step and then the removal of that layer. And that's one of the biggest differentiators of our technology.
And was this part of your PhD?
Yes. LEM was invented as part of my PhD.
The reason I asked that question is it's clearly been the thing that hasn't changed out of your product and remains the magic, or no?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
And when did you first realize the power of your insight? And maybe you can teach us a bit more about how it works.
So the journey started back in Germany. I was actually born in the Soviet Union. I was born in Latvia. Luckily enough, when I was living there, we joined the European Union. So I realized that I wanted to get a great education. So I moved to Germany to do a chemistry degree. And as part of my master's thesis, I was looking for a cool project. And I discovered this unique thing called printed electronics. I had no idea what it was, but it sounded sci-fi. So I thought, why not use my chemistry background to do something cool? I applied for this master's project, and pretty much 3 months later, I invented my first printed electronics sensor. And that became a product that my supervisor decided to commercialize. So we started a startup. I was the first engineer. And within the next few months, what we really realized is that there's a strong need to build more of these sensors. We started working with Samsung and LG. And my job became not to just build 6 of those sensors and show how they work, but start thinking about mass manufacturing. So think about building a sensor and your goal is to make them cost less than 1 euro cent. There weren't many technologies that would enable you to do that. But I started looking, and we realized there's one way is to use roll-to-roll manufacturing, which is a high-speed, high scalability process that was very emerging back in the days. It was 2017. The technologies were so immature that I had to redevelop full material stack, rebuild the entire sensor from the ground up. And despite us growing very quickly, we failed. We could never scale the sensors. I built 30. I never built hundreds. We never got to scale. We tried using conventional technologies too. We went into the clean rooms. We looked at hybrid, basically a part using conventional technology, a part using roll-to-roll. Never worked. So this is when I fell in love with the problem of scalable manufacturing of electronics. And I was especially passionate about the value proposition of printed electronics because it was a lot more sustainable. That whole part of just using the material you need rather than building many layers and then removing them only to have a couple % of that material be functional. That was something I was very passionate about. And then I thought the next logical step to solve the big problem would be to go and deepen my research roots, carry a project, find something relevant, still in material space, but using the new field that I discovered for myself, printed electronics. I went online and I looked for different PhD projects, and I found this one. It was really appealing because it was both polymer chemistry and additive manufacturing and functional materials, which I saw slotting right into that. And yeah, 6 months later, I moved to Australia and we invented LEM pretty much months after that. And when we invented it, we realized it's going to solve the problem that I was facing in Germany. It was instant. It was so clear to me. Even back when it was a prototype that we built for, $200 and there was nothing but a little dot of copper on aluminum foil, we realized that this will have a life-changing impact.
To the extent that you can share, where is this scaling magic? What is the breakthrough exactly?
The breakthrough is just in the way we build material. That magic of using electrochemistry as a trigger, and now introducing scalability through the stamping process. That is the innovation, and that is the biggest differentiation.
And what is electrochemistry?
Electrochemistry is moving electrons around to, in our case, go from, copper 2+ to copper 0. So redox chemistry, things that your cell does. And, electroplating is a very good industrial example of that. Chroming on your wheels. That is the electrochemistry.
And you mentioned there was a scaling challenge that you faced, I think last year or probably earlier.
Yep.
What was that about?
That was really about the lack of parallelization in the system. So if you have your electrochemistry and it's operating at the resolution that you want it to operate at, what you really need to solve for next is exactly what I described being the challenge in Germany. Really having large area, parallelizing that process, that took a long time. And this is what Ben worked on. Even back when we only were focusing on the non-scalable version for productization, we've been able to demonstrate using stamps. So really increasing the area of deposition, that was the innovation. And I think when we realized that we could reach the resolution that's never been demonstrated before with that parallelization and match the material quality that is needed for our industry, that was the big aha moment where LEM, even though it was the same technology, it transformed into something that will solve so many industrial challenges in our mind.
And what does the rollout look like from here? And maybe give it a bit more context. Where are we in this AI moment? And what does the rollout of TSMC's project look like and your place in it? Yeah, perhaps start there.
Okay. Well, for us, the next step is to transition from single stamp all the way to large area demonstration. So we're talking wafers and panels. That's going to happen next year in Arizona and in Sydney. This is really about engineering integration and demonstrating that the rest of the process works, not just the LEM part, which is the most important part because it allows you to build copper. You still need to ensure that it's compatible with the existing infrastructure, because one of the other advantages of having this process that just slots into the existing infrastructure, you don't have to build new fabs. You can just adopt LEM and extend your roadmap and solve your capacity issues without switching to a new annex to your clean room. So proving out that integration is one, and then demonstrating the efficiency gains. So how do you solve the memory AI wall? You improve the density of wiring, and then you improve the chip bandwidth. So actual performance of your chips improves. If you increase the bandwidth 20x, you've solved the memory AI wall. Now you have to optimize memory. And then you have to focus on transistors again. But that's a challenge for another decade. So 2028, we're going to go into high volume manufacturing.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest impact on the capacity part of the problem that we're solving. This is where most likely high volume panel manufacturing will occur as well. And then that, gap in the current AI chip capacity can finally be filled through, innovative technology.
What is the AI memory wall?
It is this communication limitation between the two chiplets. This is the limitation of the wiring that leads to inefficiency in the data center infrastructure.
Mm-hmm. And that's what essentially inhibits the 40%
Exactly.
off time.
Exactly.
Okay. And you've already shown that LEM works, and now you're just clarify that first stage for me, just so it's clear in my head.
Sounds good. Yeah. So we've demonstrated that LEM works on a stamp level size.
Got you.
So now what you have to do is place multiple stamps onto a wafer with certain alignment precision.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, using existing alignment infrastructure. We're not inventing EUV here. We're operating on micron scale. And then once you've placed your stamps with this alignment precision that is required, you do the same deposition using electrochemistry. So that's really, again, the final step of that parallelization milestone.
And then you will be able to go full throttle.
Yes.
Okay. What do you need to believe over the next year to, what needs to go right? And what's inside, what's in your control and not in your control?
Sometimes you can accelerate things in different ways. In the beginning of the LEM journey, it was really the time. We needed to try out different things and find the optimal pathway for the technology to take and the TRL maturity to kick in. Right now, the biggest limitation for our scaling is money, and we've been incredibly lucky to find enough capital to get to this stage. And we see that with this final hardware integration and process integration milestone, if we're able to, demonstrate the chip level performance improvement, that is the final milestone that we need to demonstrate. There we are relying on several partners. So there's a little bit of a logistical thing that needs to go right in terms of bringing people together. But I have full confidence because I've seen this industry do something that's nobody has done before over and over again. And this is the magic that is ASML, and this is the magic that is TSMC. So there's nothing really holding us back but that accelerating capital, which will get us all the way to profitability.
The journey of setting up your own fabrication, with it requiring so many different pieces, my understanding is that the timeline traditionally, because there is so few people who can do it, all in Taiwan, is just like a total dream, good luck, the word never. comes into play. Then TSMC decides that the moment is now to take what we know and build that in the US, specifically Arizona. If that's true, it seems as if like this really is a rare moment in time where the stars have aligned, that everyone's incentive is also to see you win. Is that unfair or fair?
The way that I see it, it's the pull from the top. It's not the push from the bottom. That's how you crack the nut of speed and scale. If you look at the hyperscalers, your Anthropics and OpenAI, the way that they've been able to demonstrate this incredible power of AI without even getting to AGI has been through NVIDIA, AMD, Google delivering the right hardware. And then Google and AMD and NVIDIA are pushing on TSMC to give them the chips. TSMC is pushing on semiconductor equipment people to bring them the right tools.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how you leverage momentum. You really go from the top. Who are the owners of the data center inefficiency problem? It's the hyperscalers. How much are they willing to pay to solve that problem?
A lot.
Yes. So I think if you use the right stakeholders and you have the right incentives of efficiency, capacity, you can solve the challenges of tomorrow. And we can go one step further. If we really are talking about AGI, if we're talking about quantum and neuromorphic, all of these technologies will have a wiring problem. Currently, AI chips have, in terms of transistors, the same capacity as our human brain. And my CTO loves to talk about gray matter versus white matter. We have enough gray matter in our AI chips to do human-level intelligence. So why is it not possible today? And we think it's the wiring connectivity problem. This is why we need more white matter. And if you communicate that to the hyperscalers, to the chip designers, they really get this problem because that's been the newest thing that changed the entire semicon world. Everybody's thinking about the wiring now. So to your point, I think we will see enormous acceleration. Yes, we are in a bubble, but also we haven't seen the full potential of AI yet. And there's more to come in quantum and neuromorphic that will be enabled by this density of wiring that hasn't been capped out yet.
How do you avoid getting acquired?
Oh
Or
my
do you
God.
want to be acquired at some point? Like if I'm one of these hyperscalers,
Yes.
and you don't have to answer this question, but if I'm one of the hyperscalers and I'm seeing progress and like either there is a race for specific specialized chips or I can, like the missing piece is actually what you've invented, that's a heck of a position to be in.
With the current trend toward vertical integration, AI sovereignty, second sourcing, supply chain resilience, it's inevitable that there will be players that will look at this technology and see it as their backup option. Not to rely on TSMC, not to rely on Samsung, not to rely on Intel. Of course, it's a no-brainer in my mind. Personally, I have a goal of bringing this all the way to impact. And this gets us to the beginning of the story. I was in love with solving the problem. How do I solve the problem? There's many ways of getting this technology to the maturity where it needs to go. And one of them is to be acquired by the right partner. And we're already working with all the right partners in this space. So I think what drives me is actually the enabling capability of the technology. I don't want this to remain a monopoly because currently 80% of all chips, of all AI chips actually, go to NVIDIA. And whether you're AMD or a new interconnect chip design company, you have to get in line. And you will not get your chip earlier than a year or 2 years later. What LEM can do for you is to accelerate your go-to-market strategy because you can build things much cheaper and faster. You can prototype, you can iterate in-house or with our help. And that's the real opportunity here. give access to not just AMD, not just OpenAI, but everyone who wants to build high efficiency chips, who doesn't want to necessarily build nuclear reactors to power new data centers. That's what really drives me. So my incentives are, I think, aligned with that enabling capability and giving access to this technology. My desired impact is really sustainability, and that really scales all the way up to the data center level. When we talk about manufacturing of semiconductors, people don't realize how inefficient the existing process is, how much waste there is. And that's one of the existing problems. We're talking about forever chemicals, PFAS. We're talking about climate change, emissions, etc. So that's one. And then when you start talking efficiency on a chip level, we've done a calculation on this. The full impact of this technology all the way to chip level and data center level can translate to 1% of total emissions saved worldwide. And that's what we want to enable. So we're not driven by necessarily growing AI demand. My personal ambition is to impact the infrastructure in that way.
What have you learned about storytelling?
Yeah, I think global ambition and really being able to communicate something that's very nerdy, it's tough. But last year, I went out raising, and I really tried to simplify the story. I tried to lean hard into the ChatGPT moment. And it's just, we were not being true to our DNA, which is very much nerdy, solving problems using technology, talking about science, talking about engineering. And I think that's been the biggest learning for me. And that, I think, is the lesson that I've learned whenever you're trying to do something that's inauthentic, that is not your company's or your technology's DNA, that is not your DNA as a founder. You're not going to raise money. You're going to attract the wrong people. And sooner or later, they will realize they're not talking to the real you. They're just trying to sell things. So lately, I haven't been selling at all. I've been just talking to people about what we do, talking about the biggest challenges we see and how we're solving them on a global scale. And the right people, they will see that, and they might not understand the technical detail of what we're talking about, but they will see the mission and the drive and the passion behind it and the technical data to back it. I think that's been the biggest combined learning.
This product has many moving parts. There's science, there's engineering, there's manufacturing, there's a lot. I can't imagine you're an expert in all of them. You probably are now. It might not have started that way. How did you think about the DNA of the company and who you needed to bring around the table that would be excited and actually value additive to what you were building?
Well, it's about starting with a problem. I saw a very clear problem when I communicated that to my team. I think a lot of them saw the same. And nowadays, what I like to think my team looks like is that art of war moment where the general brings the boat onto the shore and they burn the boat. And then there's no way back. And everybody's all in. And I think that level of commitment of we're doing our life's work. This is going to change the world because of what we do every day. We did not start with that. But over time, we've been seeing more and more evidence in the lab by talking to our customers, partners, that this is the technology that needs to exist. And over time, over the last 3 years, we've really convinced ourselves that this is the only way. And if there's one mark I can make on this world, it's the LEM, it's Syenta. And I think we just now tend to attract people who think the same way. So I think it's that data-driven, I want to see evidence of this world-changing technology combined with commitment to go the distance and not look back.
How did you think about, like you mentioned, it was an evolution of realizing that this was your life's work. How did you think about the milestones, or what have you learnt about setting milestones and goals so that you could prove what you needed to prove along the journey and inflect where the product was at?
Talking to customers, going to Taiwan, going to Arizona, going to Europe, and really understanding what are the biggest risks that people see when you talk about step change in technology. There's certain evidence that you need to bring to back up your claims. And it starts with simple things like, as I mentioned, resolution, material quality, and scalability. But when you start breaking it down, there's so many milestones on that journey. But I think that evidence-driven scientific engineering mentality that trains you to do so, I think the pitfall that we've managed to avoid, luckily, is falling in love with the technology itself, believing that it's this solution that doesn't need evidence, doesn't need to, be put through the rigor of customer insight, and continuously refining those goals. Because the density of the wiring problem, last year, if you would have asked me what our goal was, I would have told you a completely different number in terms of resolution. Like our goal is 1 micron, and we're so close. We're actually demonstrated 1 micron resolution. We're just now refining the final aspect ratio details of it. This insight comes from hundreds of customer conversations. My head of business development, who goes to all industry conferences and talks to everyone who's looking into building advanced packaging. I think that's the real way. You need to set commercial milestones, not just technological milestones.
What advice would you give to founders who are short of ideas on like finding routes into their own customers?
Tell the story of your technology, even when you think you're not ready. It will never be perfect. It's all the standard playbook of release your product before you're ready. Except in our case, we don't have a product, we have a process, and it's ever evolving, and it needs to, qualify in the next 2 years to get to high volume manufacturing. So what I've realized is when you share your vulnerable vision, when you show the data that is not perfect, we're building semicon technology outside of a clean room for the last year. Now we finally have a clean room. I remember in the last 2 years just showing these images that are beautiful in my mind, but then any semicon expert will look at them and see the dust particles. And I have to do the little distraction dance and tell them not to look at the particles, because that's not the point. The technology is what is showcased in those images. So I think sharing before you feel comfortable has still been one of the most powerful things we've done. And that shows, first of all, trustworthiness. Second of all, that vulnerability will attract more people to ask the right questions about the technology. And then you can actually get a lot of inspiration and a lot of help from that alone. What's the DNA of your team? What's like, one could look at this company and say it's a science project. I know it's not. It's a ferocious engineering team, and I'm just curious what you've learned about moving fast. And if I came to the Redfern lab, or maybe in Arizona, like, what would I be hit in the face with? It's ambitious, very curious. The rate of learning that we've been able to achieve has been accelerating. So if you look at our TRL progression, you can overlap our technological development with development of lithography, for example, in the last 40 years, and how much progress it has made in terms of both scalability and resolution. And I remember looking at that graph and just realizing that we're moving so much faster. I think it's also because we have to. But a part of it is we're very curious. I think that's what we've been able to demonstrate to the industry. We'll always listen to customer insights and we'll develop the technology in the direction where it needs to go. So my team realizes that once we get to 1 micron, we're going to go to nanometers, which was never the dream. When we started, we thought maybe 10 microns will be the dream. And then we went there. We overachieved on the uniformity. We went to 5, and now we're at 1. And now we're looking at going to front-end region. So now we're going after transistors one day, potentially. And that's crazy, but that's the exciting part of our DNA. I think the data-driven mentality, the constant iteration, the technological evolution, and honestly, also being free to fail and learning from it, that is the acceleration that I think not just my team needs, but Australia needs as well. I am very proud to be a tall poppy, and I think a big part of my team is as well. And the other thing I'm very passionate about is normalizing failure, because I learned through failure. I built so many hardware prototypes of LEM, and many of them were just not working well. And I've been able to iterate because I've learned from that failure. So certain core values around those elements, I think, resonate very well with my team. And that's what we build the culture around.
Is there a ritual that you do that reinforces any of those values?
Yes. Me and my co-founders, we share almost on a weekly basis our little failures. And they can range from, a meeting when you come unprepared and you realize you're talking to your biggest competitor. Going to TSMC, telling them that you're building essentially a process that is higher resolution than their process. And I don't think it's a failure, but there's many little things that I think we overshare because we want to encourage that open and transparent, vulnerable communication, because there's so many moving bits and pieces within Syenta. It all needs to work together, hardware, chemistry, process. Unless you have that open and honest, communication between cross-disciplinary teams, engineers that speak different languages, from, chemists to process engineers to hardware engineers, you can't really enable that teamwork in that high-pressure environment. And in fact, I was witnessing one of the demo preps yesterday, and one of the most incredible things happened in the most stressful environment of my team. And they've been able to go from a demo not working to basically restarting it, almost not talking to each other. It was just so intuitive. You could see that they knew what needed to be done. And everyone was playing their part within that demo scenario. And I was more impressed with that behavior and that culture and that team dynamic and collegiality than the actual demo itself, which is, again, groundbreaking technology. You get to see it built, copper in real time faster than anyone has built copper before. I think that these are the types of behaviors that we try to model. It's very much at Syenta. It's not a personality cult. There's not really a big ego there. I try to really enforce that. It's very data-driven. It's very much vulnerable. And we're not afraid to be wrong either. I've been wrong when we started building this technology. We went for a market that wasn't a great fit. The technology was not scalable enough to be adopted. And that's something we've learned from. Again. So it comes back to those two things, I think, in my mind.
So you mentioned that 3 government bodies have invested in the latest round.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, what have they got right and what can governments learn from what they are doing?
That's a fantastic question. What I think people don't understand about semicon space is that it's not a monolith. It's no longer just transistors, EUV, let's build this chiplet. Now, the industry is really going through a transformation. And there's many emerging new technologies. High bandwidth memory is an incredible innovation, hybrid bonding, optical, photonics. And there's really many opportunities for investment without building, tens of billion-dollar fabs, which is, I think, where the minds go when you mention the World Semicon in Australia, is unless we build this TSMC scale fab, we can't compete. So why start, right? And I think the real thing that I would like for everyone to think about is our industry is changing. It's going through an evolution. Moore's law is not really ending, but it's going to look different as a result of these innovations that I've just mentioned. And a big revolution in our space, fueled by the beast that is AI demand, is the interconnect technology. What does that mean for government investment? It means you can build a foundry that is quite impactful, which is tens of billions of dollars. You can demonstrate advanced packaging capability and sovereign manufacturing and resilient supply chain with hundreds of millions of dollars. So the ROI could be massive. We talk a lot about economic complexity level. We're 105th in the world out of 145 countries. And I think what we really need to normalize is that risk appetite and desire to listen to industry experts, to see the semicon world as non-monolithic, as this enabling and impactful space that will strengthen our economy, that will give massive return on investment, enable new innovations arriving from Australia, any place in Australia, in fact. And I think that's something that I'm very passionate about. And I'll do everything that I can to communicate that message. But at the same time, I look at our history, I look at Wi-Fi, I look at solar, and it seems that we're only willing to take the risk once there's investment coming from the US. I just hope that that's going to change. I really want to change that.
Are you bullish that it will?
I'm an eternal optimist, Mason. I have to be. This is my job. I know Syenta will be fine either way.
Yeah, and that's why you're a wild heart.
What I want to do is to change the perception, not for Syenta, but for everyone else. I remember building Syenta, and back then, the person I was looking up to was Michael Daniil, building Morse Micro. And he was the only one, and I didn't care that he was in chip design and Wi-Fi, because he was the only one that made me feel that we can build this manufacturing technology from Australia, and then we'll be the only one. But now there's so many of us. And I really want for them to see the opportunity to scale any sort of technology while based in Australia, while maintaining this global perspective and global lens on the customer. That's the hope.
Yeah, well, thank you for moving to Australia.
You are
We're
welcome.
very, very lucky
and
to have
I love
you.
Australia. I love Australia. I'm, again, despite being a tall puppy, I think it's been one of the luckiest changes in my personal life. I met my co-founders here. All of them are Australian. I got funding from the best investor in Australia, and yeah, it's been a lucky country for me.
Yeah. Thank you again for coming on, and good luck with next year's launch.
Thank you. It was fun.
That's all right. Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of Wild Hearts. If If you want to learn more from other ambitious people building, designing, and creating the world that we all want to live in, then please hit the subscribe and follow button. It would mean the world to us, the founders, the operators, and the investors who join us on Wild Hearts. This podcast is a labor of love from the Blackbird team and Day One. The show is produced by Camilla Herring and Melia Rayner at Blackbird. Our marketing genius is Eva Telemakis, and our editors are from Day One, Annie Jones and Sanjay Chabaria. Thank you all so much for listening, and we'll see you next week.